The 10th of July, 1940. World War II, the skies over southern England. The German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, launches a massive aerial campaign against the United Kingdom in what will become known as the Battle of Britain. For months, German bombers and fighter planes hammer British airfields, ports, and cities such as London, Birmingham, and Coventry in an attempt to gain air superiority ahead of a possible invasion. Despite the odds, the Royal Air Force holds firm, and by October 1940, Hitler is forced to abandon his plans to invade Britain. The country remains defiant as the British people endure the bombings with resilience, and the nation becomes a beacon of resistance against Nazi Germany in Western Europe. But not everyone shares this determination to fight back. While most Britons rally behind Churchill's call to never surrender, there are those who look to Hitler with admiration and openly sympathize with the Nazi regime. One of the most notorious British Nazi collaborators, who will pay the highest price for betraying his country, is William Joyce. William Brooke Joyce was born on the 24th of April 1906 in Brooklyn, New York, to Irish parents who had emigrated to the United States but remained firmly rooted in their political beliefs. His father had obtained American citizenship in 1894, yet the family returned to Ireland when William was still a child. Raised in a staunchly unionist household opposed to Irish independence, Joyce absorbed his parents' loyalty to the British Crown from an early age. During the Irish War of Independence, which lasted from January 1919 to July 1921, the teenage Joyce acted as a courier for British Army intelligence, a role that would soon expose him to violence and controversy. As the conflict escalated, Joyce developed close ties with the Black and Tans, British recruits sent to support the Royal Irish Police Force in suppressing Irish nationalist forces. Although many in the group were war-hardened veterans of the First World War, their brutal tactics, including arson, beatings, and extrajudicial killings, quickly turned them into symbols of British oppression. Public anger intensified following the disappearance and murder of Father Michael Griffin, a 28-year-old Irish priest and known nationalist sympathizer, whose body was discovered buried in a bog just days after his abduction in November 1920. At only 14 years old, Joyce was suspected of being involved in the killing, though no formal charges were ever brought against him. Soon after, it was revealed that he was underage, leading to his dismissal from intelligence work. Targeted by the Irish Republican Army for his role in aiding British forces, Joyce narrowly escaped an assassination attempt. Fearing for his safety, he fled to England in December 1921, with the rest of his family following him 2 years later. Joyce enrolled at Birkbeck College, University of London, where he studied English and history, graduating in 1927 with first-class honours. A gifted linguist and mathematician, he published work on philology and considered pursuing a postgraduate degree, later claiming that his research had been plagiarized by a Jewish academic. After completing his studies, Joyce applied for a position at the British Foreign Office, but when his application was rejected, he took a job as a teacher. At the same time, his political interests deepened, particularly in the ideology of fascism. He began working with, though never officially joining, Rotha Linton Orman's British Fascists. In October 1924, while acting as a steward at a meeting supporting Conservative Party candidate Jack Lazarus ahead of the general election, Joyce was attacked by communists and suffered a deep razor slash across his right cheek. The wound left a permanent scar stretching from his earlobe to the corner of his mouth, a disfigurement known as a Glasgow smile. Although Joyce frequently claimed he had been attacked by a Jewish communist, his first wife later claimed that it had actually been an Irish woman. The scar, both physically and symbolically, became a lasting part of his public image. In April 1927, Joyce married Hazel Kathleen Barr. The marriage produced 2 daughters, but quickly deteriorated due to his heavy drinking, violent temper, and serial infidelities, eventually ending in divorce. He joined the Conservative Party in 1928, and was active in the Chelsea constituency until 1930, when he was forced out due to his eccentricities and sexual misbehavior. Though he had long been drawn to fascist ideals, it was in 1932 that Joyce formally joined the British Union of Fascists, the political movement founded by Sir Oswald Mosley that same year. A gifted orator, he quickly rose through the ranks and was appointed Director of Propaganda in 1934. His speeches became increasingly radical, marked by virulent anti-Semitism, pushing the party further from its original focus on economic reform and closer to open admiration of Nazi Germany. By 1937, tensions between Joyce and Mosley had reached a breaking point, and he was dismissed from the party under the pretext of organizational restructuring. In February 1937, Joyce married Margaret Cairns White, a fellow fascist activist from Lancashire. 2 months later, he founded the National Socialist League with financial backing from a wealthy supporter. The group never had more than around 50 members. Joyce supported himself by working as a private tutor while refusing to teach Jewish pupils, and remained active in various far-right and pro-German circles, including the notorious Right Club. He also promoted so-called peace campaigns, arguing that Britain's interests lay in aligning with Germany against Soviet Russia. As his political influence faded in Britain, his admiration for Adolf Hitler only intensified. By the time of the Munich Agreement in the fall of 1938, which gave Nazi Germany territory of Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland, Joyce had already decided that if war broke out, he would go to Germany. He renewed his British passport, originally obtained in 1933, by falsely claiming to have been born in Galway, then part of the UK. Tipped off about his impending arrest and internment by a British intelligence officer, on the 26th of August, 1939, just days before the beginning of World War II, he and his wife left London for Berlin. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. In Berlin, William Joyce was soon persuaded by a British contact to lend his voice to Nazi propaganda. He joined the English language service of the German state broadcaster, the Reichsrundfunk, and made his first broadcast on the 6th of September 1939. By October, Joyce had secured a contract, beginning a role that would make him one of the most infamous figures of wartime radio. His broadcasts were part of a wider German effort to demoralize the British public, and though several English-speaking announcers were involved, Joyce quickly became the most recognizable. A British radio critic, Jonah Barrington, dubbed the sarcastic voice behind the microphone Lord Haw-Haw, a nickname that stuck and became synonymous with Joyce. The nickname itself was meant to ridicule the speaker's tone, Haw-Haw, mimicking a haughty, sneering laugh associated with British upper-class stereotypes. Initially an anonymous broadcaster, Joyce eventually revealed his real name to his listeners, and he would occasionally be announced as William Joyce, otherwise known as Lord Haw-Haw. In radio, Joyce found the perfect platform for his forceful rhetoric and flair for provocation. His broadcasts, always opening with the chilling phrase, Germany calling, took on a mocking, often threatening tone. Joyce ridiculed British leaders, urged civilians to pressure the government into surrender, and consistently blamed the war on the Jews, echoing Nazi ideology. He took particular pride in reporting German military victories in the early years of the conflict, and his dramatic delivery attracted the attention of Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, although the two never met, a fact Joyce reportedly regretted. Besides broadcasting, Joyce's duties included writing propaganda for distribution among British prisoners of war, whom he tried to recruit into the British Free Corps of the Waffen-SS, the military branch of the SS. He also wrote a propaganda book titled Twilight Over England, which was promoted by the German Ministry of Propaganda. In the book, he contrasted what he described as the evils of a Jewish-dominated capitalist Britain with the supposed virtues of National Socialist Germany. Despite official discouragement, many in Britain tuned in to hear his broadcasts. For a population living under strict wartime censorship, Joyce offered a rare and morbid glimpse into what the other side was saying. At the height of his influence in 1940, an estimated 6 million Britons listened regularly, with up to 18 million tuning in occasionally. Joyce's practice of naming newly captured British prisoners of war on air gave listeners a deeply personal reason to tune in, especially for families hoping to hear news of loved ones. However, the most important objective of these broadcasts was to urge the British people to surrender. Outside the studio, Joyce worked obsessively, drank heavily, and lived in relative comfort in Berlin. In September 1940, he formalized his allegiance to Nazi Germany by acquiring German citizenship. The following winter, he was invited by the Reich Security Main Office to lecture SS members at the University of Berlin on British fascism and the state of the British Empire. In recognition of his propaganda efforts, Adolf Hitler awarded Joyce, who served the German Führer as a loyal and useful idiot, the War Merit Cross First Class. The two, however, never met. Joyce continued broadcasting until the final days of the war. On the 30th of April 1945, as Soviet troops closed in on Berlin, he gave his last transmission. Rambling and clearly intoxicated, he condemned Britain for continuing the war and warned of the Soviet threat, signing off with a slurred but defiant "Heil Hitler and farewell." In March 1945, as Allied forces advanced deep into German territory, William Joyce and his wife Margaret were evacuated from Berlin. After a failed attempt to escape to neutral Sweden, the couple went into hiding in the northern German city of Flensburg, near the Danish border. There, Joyce lived under forged identity papers as Wilhelm Hansen. Despite the collapse of the Nazi regime, he clung to his ideals and tried to remain undetected. However, in late May 1945, he and Margaret were accidentally discovered by soldiers of the British Second Army. When asked to identify himself, Joyce reached into his pocket for his passport, prompting one of the soldiers to shoot him, fearing he was reaching for a weapon. That soldier was Geoffrey Perry, a German Jewish refugee born Horst Pinchur. He then arrested the Irish-American broadcaster who had claimed to be British and had later become German. Joyce was transferred to Britain and put on trial for treason. The charge was based on the claim that he had given aid and comfort to the king's enemies by broadcasting Nazi propaganda to British audiences. In his defense, Joyce insisted that his actions had been motivated by patriotism and a desire to see Britain join forces with Germany against the Soviet Union. However, a key issue emerged during the proceedings, as Joyce was not a British subject, but a US citizen by birth, which complicated the legal grounds for treason. Nevertheless, Attorney General Sir Hartley Shawcross argued successfully that Joyce had obtained a British passport under false pretenses and had used it until it expired in July 1940. During that period, he had received British protection abroad and therefore owed allegiance to the Crown, an argument that proved decisive. Joyce was found guilty, and the verdict was upheld by both the Court of Appeal and the House of Lords. He was sentenced to death. William Joyce was 39 years old when he was executed on the 3rd of January 1946 at 9 a.m. by British hangman Albert Pierpoint. What followed, unlike any of Pierpoint's previous executions, was a moment that some would later describe as a theatre of horror. As the trapdoor opened and Joyce plunged downward, the pressure of the drop caused the scar on his face, a reminder of an old injury, to violently burst open. The impact severed his spine as expected in a judicial hanging, but the ruptured scar created what onlookers later described as a grotesque second mouth on his face. Blood gushed from the wound, soaking the canvas floor beneath the gallows and evoking memories of more primitive, brutal executions. Within minutes, while the blood was still dripping onto the spreading red stain, Joyce's body was transferred to the prison mortuary. The jury that had convicted him was allowed to view his remains, and a coroner confirmed that the cause of death was injury to the brain and spinal cord, consequent upon judicial hanging. For all the meticulous planning and professionalism of Pierpoint, Joyce's execution, marked by this sudden eruption of blood and disfigurement, stood out as a particularly gruesome and haunting scene. Unlike most of his fellow Nazis, Joyce proclaimed his allegiance to National Socialism and hatred of Jews to the end. Before his execution, he allegedly said, "In death as in life, I defy the Jews who caused this last war, and I defy the power of darkness which they represent." Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.